Welcome to the Independent Artist Podcast, sponsored by the National Association of Independent Artists.
Also sponsored by Zapplication. I'm Will Armstrong, and I'm a mixed media artist.
I'm Douglas Sigworth, glassblower. Join our conversations with professional working artists.
Well, here we are back on the podcast, Douglas, and I don't mind sharing with you and our listeners. Honestly, August is typically my low point in ability or interest in doing the show.
Really?
It's been a long summer. It's been a great summer, but we've been Tarzaning guests here, vine to vine, and one person into the house and out of the house, and I just need to get some work done. So I'm a little...
guests as in visitors to the Armstrong household.
Yes.
Yeah.
Visitors. We gotta, it's the burden and the joy of living in a vacation community. People like to vacation here, which is awesome, but...
I can relate too. I mean, I've been on the road here 2 weeks. We just pulled in like a day and a half ago. We're flying back for a show in the mountains here. We're just home for a few days, and the list is long. So
yeah,
we love the show. We love the reactions. We love everybody's enthusiasm towards it. But today it feels a little bit like work, doesn't it, Will?
It does. The reactions actually keep us going. We were just talking about that off the air, and had a chance to talk to a couple of people here at the last show that I was in. I've only been gone for about a week and a half. We took a tiny little bit of time to ourselves with nobody. This is how we enjoyed our time. Well, you had mentioned taking a gondola ride up to the top of the mountain. Was that in Utah?
No, we were in Idaho, in Sun Valley.
Oh, wow. Okay. Mm-hmm. So you took, that's a big one up there.
We got up to 9,100 feet. It was pretty intense.
That's insane. So we took a much smaller one. We were in the mountains of Utah, and my wife reached for her phone at the top of the peak to take a picture. She's got the better camera on her phone. She had dropped it, fell out of her unzipped purse somewhere along the ride.
Up the mountain on the chairlift?
The mountain. Yep, on the chairlift. So I did have, we used the whole, I'm not trying to plug Apple. We're certainly not getting any money for this. Maybe we should, but I'd used a little Find My iPhone feature, and she plugged it into that, and we backtracked as soon as we got onto Wi-Fi, because there was no signal up there. It managed to give a location coordinate, and we tracked it all the way back. So we took the lift all the way back down, then halfway back up, and then hiked back down to find it, and only broke just a little crack in the screen protector is all she had.
And you found it. Well, that's a happy ending.
But then you spend your whole freaking day, like, we've got the day off. And it's like, let's try to find your phone that you don't want to look at anyway. But
that's right. You were trying to avoid.
Right.
Man, that sucks. We did the same, though. We took, we didn't lose our phone, but we did the same. We took a ride up the mountain. The first half of the ride in Ketchum there in Sun Valley, it is a gondola ride because they have the deep canyons. And I am a little bit afraid of heights. And Renee, and I didn't know that it was going to affect me that bad. Renee's like keeping me calm. I'm like, and then when we got to the next level, you can do the chairlift to the very top, which was 9,000 feet. And she says, well, if that kind of threw you, I don't know if you're going to want to do the chairlift. And I did it. It was fine. It was great. I was really happy I did it. So.
The heights don't affect me. I'm a huge wussy for snakes. Didn't see any snakes, so I'm okay. That was my, why did it have to be snakes?
Did you know that I'm a snake wrangler?
What?
I am a snake wrangler. Did you know this story? Have I ever told it on the pod?
You never have.
You don't want me to tell it? Are you going to get a little triggered?
Go ahead. Go ahead. It's just, that's what I heard about you, Doug. I heard you were snake wrangler. That's what they're saying behind the...
Okay. All right. I know where this is going, but no, I'm
just leaving it alone.
Okay. We're in the studio one day, years ago, and Renee's looking at the pile of raw materials, our batches and bags, right directly behind our bench.
Yeah.
And she looks over and she thinks, oh, geez, how did that leather belt get out here? And then she zooms in on it, and she realizes it's a snake that had made it into our studio and was just kind of hanging out within feet of my hand where I dipped the block into the water. And she goes, no, I don't want to alarm you or anything, but there's a snake about 3 inches from your hand. And we're in the middle of this piece, and she's thinking we're not going to like throw this piece away. I just took it and I just threw it in the can, and we left the studio. So we're thinking, how do we get rid of this snake? Well, we have this hook that we use to open and shut our doors, for the ovens and stuff. And so I took that metal hook, I went over, and I go to scoop it up. And the whole time, her dad is like who lives next door. He's like a camper. His idea of a good time is to spend a week out in the woods, right? So she's wanting to call
Horrifying.
Yeah. Like, why?
What a nightmare.
She's like, let me call my dad. Have dad come over and take care of this. He's the perfect person to do it. And something came over me that I just kind of felt a little bit emboldened, like, how dare you come into my space? And I kind of scoop up this snake, and then I pinch it, and I realize I've got it stuck under this hook. And I go, Renee, grab me the axe. She's like, no, wait for my dad. And then I'm starting to feel really confident. I'm like, get me the axe. I chop that head right off the snake right there in front of me.
Yeah.
The snake head flips around, detached from the body, and looks up at me because it hasn't, it takes a while for it to completely die. Flips around at me, sticks out its tongue and its little beady eyes like, I'm gonna get you, asshole.
Horrifying.
So since then, Renee calls me the snake wrangler, and no snakes have come back to our studio
snake wrangling would have meant the snake would have lived. What was it, a poisonous snake or
No, it's probably a bull snake, but
you should have let him live. That's what they all say.
Yeah, maybe we would have kept more mice out of our studio.
That's a thing. If you have mice, the snakes appear.
Yeah.
So maybe the mice were coming in to get all toasty and warm.
I hope our artist friends don't hate me for decapitating that snake. Not for that. Many other reasons. Many.
He's lovable. That's the me. I'm catching the ire these days. In New Mexico, that's the land of the poisonous snakes. But in Minnesota and up here, we don't even have poisonous snakes up here at all. Mm-hmm. Like if you see a snake, it's just like you can just let it go. But the old I don't know what's it called, the fight or flight. I'm flight on that.
That's right.
I was fight kicked in. I'm just kind of. There's some huge.
And the thing is, I've told the kids, so I'm like, you don't need to be afraid of them. They're not going to hurt you. But for some reason, I just was like, get out of my studio.
Yeah. It's just plus the emasculation of like, let me get dad.
Yeah, right. What? I think that is really what kicked it in right there. It was like, I couldn't handle it, So,
you're like, oh, dad, is that what you need? Give me the axe.
I'll show you.
I got your dad right here. Here's your daddy. Here's daddy, Renee. Here he is. Give me the axe.
Oh, well, it's it doesn't seem like it's too hard for us just to jump right back into a conversation, is it?
I guess so. Yeah, everybody's like, oh, you're going to talk? We had a car breakdown. My truck broke down on the way to Park City this past weekend. And it's the least interesting story you could possibly have. Like a bunch of people had car trouble this week, and you handle it, It's like...
But it's a huge pain in the ass. So, that was the big thing.
There's no story. I guess there's a story, but it's like, it's just boring, right? I'll try to give you the Reader's Digest condensed version because I really do think, we all have road trouble and it's pretty much just how do you handle it. And we had time for one repair and it took two. The biggest takeaway for it was that it happened at a gas station, so it wasn't that big of a deal. My kids were immediately on their phones trying to see where the closest U-Haul was while I was inside dealing with a mechanic. Nobody freaked out. We just dealt with our shit and moved on,
Turned into Team
panicking.
Armstrong. Everybody got to work.
It was good. Susan sat down with the girls and got to work, and they were like pulling up U-Haul places and hotels and what we could do for the night. And I was trying to find a mechanic, and the mechanic was less than a mile, so drove it, dropped it off. The water pump wasn't all that it took, needed a belt, too much time, so we rented a U-Haul. So
you made it there. You had to miss the first preview, but you were there bright and early Saturday morning, ready to go.
Yeah, and hats off to a bunch of folks that offered to help set up, but our buddy Michael Schwegman was out there, and a big, huge thank you to him. He didn't even really ask if we needed help, just showed up and got to work. So that was awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah, super good guy.
Yeah.
But, then we're driving around sexy Park City in a 15-foot U-Haul van.
Nice.
It's like, but whatever, right? Can't be sexy all the time, Douglas.
No, that's true. But hey, this actually makes me think of something, and that is, I noticed at the last 2 shows I was at, this conversation came up a few times. And that was like when there are these long moments in between like interested people talking, it's how you know how your energy can really dip. I mean, in your situation, you show up, you get through all of that. How do you not be exhausted for one, stressed about the whole deal? How do you keep that energy up while, you're trying to make sales and make a living?
I don't know. You just kind of do. I don't know. I kind of had a crappy Saturday. I had most of my sales on Sunday, so maybe I didn't, right? Maybe I just didn't.
Yeah.
I think that's I think that's the honest answer. I think I was way off of my game, and especially needing that Friday night kickoff and having a whole third of the show. And if I'm looking at my numbers for the show, I was a third off. Exactly a third off of what I can typically expect to nail it at that show. So maybe that's what, miss a third of the show, lose a third of the profits.
I've also heard from other people that is a kind of a common number, that even those who were there the whole weekend at their shows, this whole run, have been feeling like they're down a third and wondering if it's a trend, wondering if it's the news, who knows? I mean, there's so many different things out there that affect the buying energy and the enthusiasm. So
yeah, there really are.
Hey, speaking of doing shows in the mountains, do you ever find that you are prone to altitude sickness?
No. I live in Santa Fe. It's like 6,500 feet, so I'm used to it. But that is true. I did go to visit a friend in Denver one time, and I was like just really lagging. It felt kind of fevery, and but of course, the first thing that I did when I landed in Denver was to drink a beer. You're like,
that totally helps.
Oh yeah, that's really good for you. How about you? Altitude ever get you guys?
Well, I get a little sluggish, but Renee gets extremely affected. And she looked into it going there, because I know some people will breathe into those, those cans of oxygen, and they say that it helps. And I thought I would check with the doctor before we left just to find out options. And they said, well, yeah, it helps, but literally those oxygen cans help for the second you inhale it. It doesn't last longer than that little bit of huffing. But he said they do make a medication, and she tried it this time. And it does come with its pros and cons. It makes you so tired. You take it ahead of time. What it's doing is it is changing, I think, if I have it right, it's changing the pH of your blood so you can assimilate to the oxygen levels better. And so it takes 3 days of taking this medication. But the downside is we're traveling and we're driving, You can't drive when you're on this stuff because it makes you so tired.
Yeah.
When she got to Park City, man, she was on top of the world. She felt no issues with altitude because her body had already acclimated before she got there. But that meant someone else did all the driving.
Yeah, that's a bummer. That's crazy. We had our driving. So since we had the kids with us, U-Haul only sits 3.
Oh, there.
We had to rent. It wasn't just renting 1. We had to rent 2.
Oh,
because we had to get the girls back to their mom. So we did a little Smokey and the Bandit action, and Susan rented a car and had the girls, and I had the big truck, and she's just like eastbound and down, just loaded up and truck, and she went out and cleared all the Smokies out of my way, and I tried to push on through. But
okay.
Man, yeah, it was just a no fun week, honestly. It's just typically a weekend that I look forward to all year, and zero fun. Moving on, speaking about zero fun, I did have a question from an artist on the street just this 2 weekends ago. And he asked me, he had a terrible weekend, and he was asking me, and I already know the answer because I answered him, but I'll ask you and get your opinion. But he was saying, well, when do you look at these shows that you've been looking forward to, that you've heard these great things about, that you tank? Like, how do you handle that? How do you handle tanking like a show that you expected to be great?
Are you saying do you go back and give it another try? Do you?
I don't know. You tell me. How do you handle it mentally? What do you do? Would you ever try it again? Would you try it again with different work?
I mean, there's a lot of different factors that go into it. I mean, sometimes it really just comes down to, did we have any good conversations with people who seemed interested? If it was that nobody came in the booth and nobody interacted with the work, well, that might tell you our audience isn't there. But like, for example, the last 2 shows we did, we left with a number of potential projects that could happen after showing them what we do. And if we make it and show them, it could turn into a lead. So there's that.
See, and that's what I kind of told him. I was like, well, you look for reasons or you look for excuses. Your work may not just go over in this market.
Mm-hmm.
Where was your location? Did you have a bad location in the show? Maybe it's just because you were new.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's just not what they were looking for. Sometimes you are the backdrop to somebody else's great show. There's a great quote by the band, the Drive-By Truckers, where they have been the opening act for a bigger act, and people have come out and they typically draw. And they didn't draw that night, and they just are the opening act, and they set up their things, and then they go, and their people are there for somebody else. Mm-hmm. And I liken a lot of what we do to music and musicians and traveling musicians. But the quote is, "It ain't my crowd and it ain't my night, but I'd be lying if I said I can't relate. I'm just the opening act, and the van is packed, and I'm hauling ass to the next state." And it's just so apropos to what we do.
Totally.
You just pack your stuff. Like, if you're typically doing well at shows, you're typically hitting these averages that you're happy with. And then all of a sudden you have a clunker of a weekend, even though you think that your booth looked great, then it's not you, it's the show, and it didn't work for you. And there are plenty of the big shows out there that just don't work for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't let it shake you off of your game.
I mean, you're right when you say that, sometimes you can look at it and go, well, I was in a bad booth location, or, you know what I mean? Those sorts of things you can maybe tweak and give it another shot. But when it's not the right show, there's nothing to feel bad about. It's just seek out the right show and just keep looking.
I agree. Yeah. And Douglas, by any chance, I was kind of hoping you'd say this, but by any chance, were you thinking of saying the word pivot?
Do I say it a lot?
Well, Dylan Strzynski told me that he created the independent artist podcast drinking game. And whenever you say pivot, he drinks. And whenever I say shake you off your game, he drinks. And unfortunately, he's in the hospital. After last week's episode, he's not in the hospital. Friends, he's fine. But,
he's just had a really good time listening to the last episode because he got wasted.
Right. Exactly. So thank you so much for tuning in, and take your criticisms and shove it.
You try doing this and just spontaneously come up with a whole new language every time you speak.
Right. That's right. Show you.
Okay, get ready to drink here, Dylan. Speaking of pivot, it's time to pivot to our guest this week. Oh, what do you think of that,
nice.
Huh? Yeah.
Is she going to shake me off my game?
I think she's going to really shake you off your game because, you know what? Beth Bojarski is somebody I've been wanting to talk to for a long time. So
yeah, I'm jealous of this one. I'm happy to sit down and be a fly on the wall, but I love Beth and her work and what an incredible human that is. So thank you for talking to her, and I'm looking forward to this one myself.
All right. Well, here we go. Here is Beth Bojarski from Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
This episode of the Independent Artist Podcast is brought to you by Zap, the digital application service where artists and art festivals connect.
Hey, Will, do you remember the old way of doing these applications with red dots on the slides and self-addressed stamped envelopes?
Do you still have a rotary phone, Douglas? No, I don't remember that.
Well, I just like that they were with us back then when we made the switch from analog to digital.
It's a huge switch, and now Zap is the industry standard.
And they're always creating features that make our lives easier, too. So I do like what Zap does, and I do like that most of the shows I apply to are on Zapplication.
Exactly. So I personally appreciate what Zap is doing, and thanks for not making us reinvent the wheel every single week like we used to have to do.
Beth Bojarski, welcome to the podcast. I've been wanting to talk to you for a long time. I was just telling Will that. But you didn't know that, of course. I'm sorry, I don't mean to put any pressure on you.
I'm glad I didn't know that.
Well, I've seen you a couple times this year at a few good shows. Yeah, you having a good year? How's everything going with you out here on the road?
So far, the summer has been good. Where am I at? I think I'm at maybe 7 shows for the year total.
Okay.
So I've done 5. I only have 2 more shows left, which is St. Louis and then going to Plaza. So not a really heavy show schedule, but they're going just fine. I'm happy with them.
And is that like the perfect kind of number for you is 7?
For me, it is. It is. Mark can do more than I can. He doesn't do a lot more, but he can. And I find 7, like 9 is pushing it. I just need that time in the studio.
Okay. Well, you mentioned Mark. For those listeners who don't know you, Mark Winter is your husband, and he was a guest on the show a couple of years back. Will interviewed him. Mark Winter, I have to dig up what the name of his episode was. Something, a bucket full of rattlesnakes. That's what it was.
It is. It's about snakes. The title has snakes in it. So, yes.
So you guys couldn't be more polar opposite in your bodies of work, would you say?
I would say yes and no. The work has morphed a little bit, so there is a little more of a contrast now. But kind of early on, he was doing characters that you would have thought, in a sense, jumped out of my paintings.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, because my work started out being a lot more raw, a lot more cartoonish, and then I would incorporate a lot of sass in the paintings, and then I had writing on the paintings. So there was a little more of a tie early on.
And does some of that, what you were talking about, does that come from your graphic illustration kind of background?
Where I came from?
Where you started your initial work?
As far as the initial work, it almost was opposite of what I was doing.
Oh,
yeah, because I was trained in watercolor. I went to school. I went to Kendall College of Art and Design and as an illustrator. And I was doing really tight watercolor paintings, very photorealistic.
There was so much detail. I remember seeing those early pieces that you showed on Seesaw, which was a YouTube program that you were creating during the pandemic as an opportunity for people to, since we couldn't go anywhere, to see you guys online, which was great. It was brilliant.
Right. Get to know us, get to know other artists, get to kind of come into our world for a moment. We had a conversation, as we're doing now. We couldn't go out during the pandemic and meet people and find our people. So we invited them into our world, which I thought was really interesting.
Totally.
And I feel it did what we wanted it to accomplish. And I miss it. I do.
Yeah. Well, everything, I guess, has its moment in time. Obviously, to sustain something like that into this kind of market that we all do is tough. I mean, podcast is kind of tough to squeeze it in. I mean, we add video production on top of that. It's a full-time job.
Yes, exactly. It was a full-time job. I don't know if I've ever worked harder, really.
Really?
Oh my gosh, I was pushing it just to learn everything that was involved as far as creating videos. And I'm not super computer savvy. So there was a huge learning curve. And then as well as trying to still turn out bodies of work, because I thought, now is my opportunity to get ahead of myself, to catch up,
right. You're ahead of the game. You have the inventory waiting to take to shows when it opens up.
Exactly. So I just really pushed myself. But kind of going back then to, as you saw in one of the Seesaw episodes, kind of my early work.
Yeah.
That's what I studied. I studied the watercolor. I studied doing these really tight photorealistic paintings. And then I wasn't doing any of them. So I graduated and then I just stopped painting because they took so long. They took so long, and just my subject matter, there wasn't a lot of my personality in it. Okay. So I stopped painting.
So because it was a chore, it was just something that it wasn't as fun?
Right. I didn't yet know what I wanted to paint. I was painting and technically I could paint, but I didn't have a grasp on what I wanted to say yet.
Cool.
And so when I did start painting, I switched to oil paints, loved them immediately, loved them.
For those of us who don't work with paint, I mean, how are they different? How are the materials different?
Oh, it's just, well, in this case, number one, the feel. Oh my goodness. You just know it when you feel it. It's just, I don't even know what it's like,
Sure, but it was an immediate attraction, how the medium flowed. It was just right for you.
It flowed. It was like butter.
I love it.
And what it did by I was working with the watercolor, I needed to know what I was going to paint. I needed to have it all planned out because it's watercolor. You make a mark. The mark is made. It's complete. With the oil paint, it gave me time to move the paints around. The paints wouldn't set. So I was figuring it all out on the board, which then that became my process. I would just sit down in front of a board and I'd move paint around. And then I started kind of having fun with my subject matter. And that's why it was cartoonish. That's why there was a lot of sass, because I'd like to tell a story that's silly or that might be a little uncomfortable, that might make you think, that might slap you across the face.
Yeah.
I like to slap people across the face.
Don't slap me across the face right now. But hey, I was wondering, so I don't know if I have this correct, but do I understand that, have you described that you'll start doing a color blocking kind of without an idea of where your painting's going to go, and then it kind of like a direction just emerges through the process? Is that true?
That's true. So how I work is I just put color on a board and I block it in different colors. So there's a little bit of something interesting happening besides just something being all blue or something. And I thin the paint down so it almost goes on like a watercolor. So it's blotchy, and it's like looking up at the clouds and trying to see something in them.
Okay.
It's a lot like that. I will start seeing things in the blotches of color that I put on the board and start pulling them out. And I used to have a sketchbook right next to me. I'd have funny thoughts and I'd do little bitty sketches. And I realized pretty early on that I would fall in love with that little thumbnail I did, that little sketch. And if I tried to do it, if I tried to put it on the board, I lost interest. The energy was gone. The creativity and all the energy was in the sketch, and it was done.
Oh.
And I never liked the conversion onto the board as much as I liked the initial little sketch. So I stopped sketching. I just thought, you know what? Let's just put all that energy into the painting itself as I'm doing it, and then I won't have that disappointment.
I love that. It's almost like instead of trying to make this thing in front of you turn into something that you had thought about a while back, it's almost like it's evolving in front of you and you're having a conversation with it as it goes.
It is. I have to stay focused with it. I have to engage it the whole time. And I'm spending so much time with the painting to begin with that I might as well, do all the work right there with it. And that means erasing. The amount of times Mark has walked into the studio and I've put 3 days of work into a figure and then it's gone. And then a whole section is gone.
It could be like, where did that piece go? And you're like, oh, it's here. It's just been painted over.
Exactly. I unpaint sometimes almost as much as I paint.
Okay.
Yeah, I take away, I put back on, I build. There are paintings with 4 paintings under them.
Oh, wow. I was talking this past weekend with Amy Lee Carstensen and Daphne Covington, and they said sometimes they feel like they need to charge, they do abstracts, and sometimes they feel like they have to charge the price of 5 paintings for a piece that maybe they've gone back and redone a few times. I mean, the time element, is that something you experience too, then it sounds like?
It is. It is. Which I like, to me, there's a secret painting under it that nobody knows about. But I know that somebody's under there who, didn't quite make the cut, but morphed into something more powerful, more beautiful, more,
Right. You know what you're describing is quite similar to what I feel like our process is with glass, because there is such a conversation with the medium and the material, and it changes. I mean, we can't make the glass like if we've passed a point or passed a step and the material doesn't want to do it, we can't go back and try and force it into something it's not. And yours isn't so much the function of that, but it isn't also like what you're creating and the story you're telling, and if it feels right or personal or whatever you're trying to say is
right. And there's a point that I'm pulling whoever this character is out, right? I see the eye, I see the nose, I start developing it. They need some hair, maybe an ear. There is a point in the painting that I have to then decide, okay, what makes this character interesting? What do they have to say? What is the story that I'm going to tell? And so I do have to then direct it, so it's not completely a free flow of thought. Yeah, I got to head somewhere with it. In fact, I am staring at 3 paintings currently in my studio where I thought I knew what direction I wanted them to go, and I don't. And I'm stuck now because until I can move that paint around and it can talk to me, I can't move forward with them. So,
oh yeah. I mean,
you can get stuck.
I was going to say, are there periods that it just becomes almost like an impasse where, how do you get past that? I mean, what have you done in the past?
I pick up another board and I start another piece.
Okay.
And I just, it's not a breakup where you need a little room from each other. You need a little space from each other.
Yeah.
But kind of, you put it to the side. We spent too much time together.
Yeah, it's like an enmeshment, right?
Exactly. We need a moment now. We need to take
see other people.
Exactly. Learn from other people.
Learn
from another painting.
Sure.
And then a lot of the times something will pop into my head and
get you there.
And get me there. And sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes they get abandoned, and that's okay.
I also had read about you that, a lot of the times the message is a deeply personal one. Like it's something that you identify in yourself, or maybe like something we might be a little insecure about, or something quirky about ourselves. And then that becomes the forefront of the whole piece.
Yes, I do like to paint more awkward people or awkward moments, because we all have them, number one, right?
Right.
And sometimes just making them more commonplace and just putting them out there and laughing at yourself and laughing. That's the best thing you can do, is laugh at yourself and not take yourself too seriously. And I think just by doing that, it just makes people more comfortable around each other.
It is. It's like sharing what is kind of personal and vulnerable, and without, I don't know, insecurity, or just saying that, hey, this is it. This is me. Other people then have a safe space to do the same.
I had done a painting of birds. I think the saying on it said, they gathered up the fingers that no one seemed to want, or something like that. There were little chickadees, and each had a finger in their mouth, and they were gathering them into a nest. And somebody came in and saw the piece, and then was asking me questions about it. Why did you pick that subject matter? Why do they have the fingers? What are they going to do with them?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I said, that just if somebody loses a limb or something, or a finger, people can be awkward about that, Mm-hmm. And even just questioning what happened, or, it's an imperfection. And some people see that imperfection and it puts up a block, or it makes somebody hesitant to connect with that person. And we had this really, really lovely conversation. And as the person left, I had turned already to talk to someone else. And he said, "Hey, Beth." And I turned and he held his hand up to the painting and he was missing fingers. And he held it up right to where one of the fingers was painted on the painting. So it completed his hand. And he had the biggest smile on his face and just waved and walked away. And I just, went, it was,
Wow.
it was a beautiful moment.
Do you ever think in those moments where maybe the imagery, even to you, might seem obscure or like, where did that come from? And then you have a situation like that and you're like, okay, whether they buy it or not, it still resonated with somebody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Regardless of why I would put something on a painting, maybe my story is something different, but somebody connects with it in their own way, see something in it that I maybe, in that case, fingers are very specific, but there certainly are things in paintings that I wouldn't have thought of, or a story that I wouldn't have thought of that someone else does. And I just think that's so wonderful that there can be layers, there can be layers to a story that everyone can take what they need to from it and see what they need to in the piece.
The other thing I noticed that I really love about your work is kind of that whole aspect of irony. And that is like, you might have a very detailed portrait of somebody who's maybe sitting up straight and looks very formal and maybe traditional in one sense. But then there's just something off, like they might have a spoon stuck on their nose, or they might be cross-eyed or something like that, where it's like they're proud to show, this thing that is just like unusual. And it always cracks me up. It's like, where does she come up with these ideas?
Right. And that's the whole, as I started in the beginning and I did things that were more cartoonish, and I felt I could really be sassy and tell these crazy stories. But my goal always was to get tighter and tighter with the figure and bring more realism to the story, so that slowly, I'll let you know when I think I'm there, because I'm not there yet. But just, I want it to be look like your neighbor or your friend, a real life setting with the sass, with the spoon on the nose, with the sniffing the glue. It was something I didn't know I could do in the beginning. When I would be sassy with the cartoon look, it made sense. But I was nervous. Can I tell that same type of story, but with more, realistic characters? And I'm trying to tighten up how I paint and I spend more time with them. I'm not quite there. I'm working on it. But,
well, if you're not quite there, then a lot of us are nowhere near there, because I think a lot of us think of you as, as one of the tops out there.
I get so overwhelmed by art shows. Like, I almost feel like I want to cry right now. I get so overwhelmed at shows by just the skill and the talent of the artists around me.
Yeah.
That I feel like, oh my gosh, I've got to catch up. I've got to keep up with these, with my fellow artists, because I am absolutely blown away by what my friends and fellow artists turn out. So for me, it's a constant just up my game. I got to up it. I got to up my game.
Wow. Well, would you say that the connections with people in this industry, in this art fair world, really is a good driving force for you in your work? Like, it's the absolute perfect fit for you to keep growing and exploring your work and doing what you do?
Absolutely. No, but I mean, the fact that it takes me so long to create the work. I am in the studio a lot, usually about 11, 12 hours a day.
Really?
So, yeah. And so the fact that I'm doing these shows that brings artists together, that gives me that energizes me, refuels me. I also get to see work. So if I were to bring it to a gallery, I'm not spending time with other work as much. I'm not getting to see what other artists are turning out. I'm not being able to talk about the process with other artists. I mean,
and collectors.
You love that, don't you?
Yeah.
Just
Plus, I mean, for the amount of time every single day that you're in your studio, that could really, I mean, you turn out great work being in the studio that often, but it could make you crazy being in your studio that often. You need a break. You need to get out and see the world and be amongst people. And
exactly right. I paint for myself. I envision, okay, I would put this on my wall. So it's still, I don't know, there's still a little bit of a, oh my gosh, when somebody says that they want to put it on their wall, you know?
Right. that is like it's an honor.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
So you don't, I mean, some of us out here probably operate from a place of, will it sell? Who's going to want it? Sounds like you're truly being internally driven by what you like and what you would want to hang in your house and see and live with. Yeah.
Right. I think early on there was a little bit of a focus on maybe trying to come up with what somebody else might like. And that just, it stalls my process. It's just, I just paint things that make me happy. And even color palettes change based on what's happening in my world. So I know that kind of during the pandemic, my whole palette got brighter and and cheerier. And
why do you think that was? Because some people felt like the pandemic was a period of where things got dark for them.
And I needed that brightness then. So I needed to see in the paintings reflected just something, again, if that's going to go on my wall, I want now something that I can look at that's poppy and that's lifting and that makes me happy.
Right. So you're painting for you, you're speaking to yourself. If it resonates, great. Another kind of external force that a lot of people, that kind of gets in the way of process is the whole idea of awards. And I mean, the shows I've been at this year, you take home pretty good awards. Do the awards ever mess with your head?
I was lucky to win awards this year. It's not a commonplace that I do. It's unexpected. It floors me. I get weepy. I get, and it's funny because I do have a painting of an old 18th, 17th century person where they used to wear these really big collars, really big, stiff accordion-like collars. And
like
I've turned it into, yes, and I've turned it into a blue ribbon. So it is funny you said that because there's a painting I'm staring at right now where I'm trying to figure out what her story is. Why does this, I don't know, maiden or queen, I don't even know if she'll be a queen or something.
Okay.
But just that standard portrait, why does she have the big blue ribbon on?
Interesting.
I'm not sure yet.
We'll be right back.
We have a call for entry this week, Douglas, with some new information added onto it. The Oklahoma City Arts Festival, they listened to their artists this year. Have you heard about this?
That's pretty cool. It's always been a 6-day festival, which has been a really long event. But the artist said we can do the same kind of sales in 4 days. So the show is tightening up. They're going to be a 4-day event this year.
Wow. Thursday through Sunday. They actually still have 2 days for artists to load in. They're sticking with their VIP early buyer program. They moved that from opening day morning to Wednesday night in conjunction with a fundraising party. So no more 14-hour opening day, folks. That's a big change.
And this show's a commission show, so they know what people are spending, and they can quote the actual dollars. Collectors spend $1.83 million per year on average.
That's a lot of money for a fairly reasonable amount of artists.
The application is live now, and they're taking applications through September 29th.
Show runs April 25th through 28th.
8th. Look for that on Zap.
And jump on and apply. So, Will, looking back earlier this season, you spoke with show director Camille Marchese, and that was a great talk.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to her, Douglas, because of her experience with Winter Park and then the interest in taking over a different show, trying to bring it back to former glory.
Well, she reached out to us this week because she wanted to announce that her show is open for applications, and the Coconut Grove Arts Festival is now in its 60th year, so it's kind of a big year for this event.
Those round numbers are all important for all of us, whether it's a birthday or a big show that's managing to stay in the limelight for that long.
Yeah, well, with that 60th anniversary, they're doing $300,000 in marketing, so the word is going to be out. It's a big deal to get down to the Grove that weekend.
$20,000 average in sales based on the 2023 Artist Survey.
That's insane. That is great.
Yeah, what?
Yeah,
what? I'm sorry. That's on average?
Yes.
So I don't know what your goals are, but that seems like it's got to be in a lot of people's wheelhouses.
If you're interested, check out their listing on Zapplication. The deadline to apply is September 15th.
If February 17th through the 19th fits into your schedule, especially with a South Florida run, if you want to try to get into that one, the application is coming on up.
Well, I had made the reference earlier to you and Mark having such different work, but what I wanted to kind of point out about that is I've seen you at a number of shows where you guys do show your work. Some artist couples will have, booths side by side, but I love how you guys can take that opportunity if the show says it's okay. Mm-hmm. And turn your 2 single booths into a double booth, like a gallery. And ironically, I mean, sharp, rusty metal and comical oil paintings don't seem like they would work together, but there's something about them that just does.
Right. Does the work complement each other? I feel it really does.
Yeah.
So we, at Jazz Fest in New Orleans, that is the first time, and until this summer, the only show that allowed us to actually combine our work into one booth. We could share the booth, and we love doing that. I think it just, obviously Mark having work on pedestals on the ground, and then the paintings on the wall, the space allows for it. So
totally,
that's great. And then just, I think it plays with each other really well. This year, we asked the Cherry Creek Art Fair if they would allow us to merge our work. In the past, I've been pushing it, we create little paths going between our booths that people, so it can flow. You can flow from his booth into mine.
Like you might have your walls rolled up or something, so you could see both of you together when you would do 2 singles or something.
Yep, and little pathways through, and maybe a painting on the side that when you're in his booth you can see it. But I really wanted to completely blend, and I asked the director of the Cherry Creek show if we could do that, and she said yes. I was so happy.
I love that. We were just down the street from you, and I totally loved that. Every time I'd walk by, I'd be like, I'd just take it in because I love both of your work so much, and to see it together was so awesome.
And a lot of our collectors and people who are following us love both of our work. So I just wanted to see what it looked like if we gave it the space, opened everything up, and then if we had the opportunity to do that more often, it affected the work because I knew Mark was working on some spikier pieces with the nails. And so I turned to balloons. I just thought to have a painting with a balloon kind of over visually.
Sure.
One of his pieces with the spikes would just be this really playful juxtaposition. And I liked how it turned out, and the show seemed happy with it.
That's awesome.
So will we be allowed to do it in the future, and will we do it at other shows? I hope we have that opportunity. I'd like to be ready for it the next time, a little further in advance. I think
Okay.
we knew about it 3 months in advance, and I need a little more time than that to
Yeah,
get some
right.
paintings ready, but really kind of think about it maybe a little more.
Well, I mean, as a married couple, you've operated as, individual artists your whole career. I mean, of course, you influence each other. I'm sure, like, you might say, what do you think of this? And he might be like, what do you think of that? But in this regard, it is a little more collaborative than like, oh, you want to do that? Or wouldn't this be a good foil to that or something?
Right. It would play off each other a little more in the studios and see what comes out.
Mm-hmm.
Because certainly, yes, we've done that. I know that Mark has done characters, or I have that almost we want to see what happens if it comes to life in 3D or vice versa. So we do, we're good at helping each other out and getting each other through humps,
Mm-hmm.
through those stalls. Mark will probably be up here and I will be questioning him on some of these paintings that I told you might have me stuck a little bit. It's great that he can help me out. And
can you think of an example where he has kind of sometimes given you that little nudge that you needed to be like, the clouds have opened and I now see my way?
I guarantee when Mark listens to this, there's going to be something that jumps into his head and he's going to say, yeah, I told her that should be,
He said, put my face on a balloon, lady.
Well, I had a Mylar balloon in the house from a party. Okay. And I just, and I was just being silly with the balloon. So that certainly was inspiring with just when Mark he had quite a mustache that he was growing. And I just thought, yeah, that's gotta go on the balloon. But he, at the moment, as we're chatting, I don't have anything that jumps into mind, but he has every now and then just been genius with what if,
mm-hmm.
What if they're holding this? And it's like, oh my gosh.
Mm.
And then he wants the prize money. Of
course.
I'll tell you, he was the inspiration for a painting I did with a huge metal cone on this guy's head. Because Mark had this huge piece of metal and he put it on over his head, and took a picture of himself, and it's one of my favorite pictures of him.
Wow.
So I thought
kind of like a giant dunce cap or whatever.
It looked like a giant a cone you'd put on your dog because he licks himself too much.
Oh, that one. So, I remember that piece. Right. Yeah. Like around the neck so they won't lick a
exactly
stitches or something. Okay.
Yep. And so I put the big cone on this guy and 2 popsicles in his hands, and I called him the overlicker. So
I didn't know that was the title of the piece. I love it.
Yeah.
I love that.
And I'll tell you that I didn't even know where it was going to go. So here's to kind of finish that whole, I don't know all the time.
Sure.
I completed the painting with the cone. I thought the cone was going to be enough. And I thought just calling him the overlicker was enough. The painting was complete. Okay. I hung it on the wall at a show and I brought it home and I went, oh my gosh, she needs popsicles. And so I didn't realize I wasn't done with it.
It was even shown. It was shown and it was still in process.
It was shown and it was still in process and I resolved it and it made it just the full belly laugh I got from you because I told you about the popsicles.
That is like the piece de resistance. The idea of somebody trying to get those popsicles around the cone. Yep. There you go.
Couldn't do it. He couldn't do it. They were dripping in his hands.
Well, what about the idea of, there's an element of distortion that you implement into your work quite brilliantly. And I know that you are, you're trained in such realism and detail and stuff. So in this process, how are you able to create, I don't know, like the distortion in the image or the face or whatever? Is talk on that a little bit.
The distortion was there in the beginning because it needed to be, because I was I wanted to do these, like I said, these like little slaps, this a little bit of irony in the story that I think it needed to have that softness of the cartoon to be approachable, to have people walk up to it, because they had the wonky eye and because the figures were a little distorted. I think people knew, oh, it's okay to laugh. It's okay to giggle. It's silly. It's a cartoon. It's funny. And then that's why I'm trying to pull back from that and get a little tighter and a little tighter, because I still want you to laugh. And I'm trying to find where that line is. I don't want you to be afraid to laugh. I don't want you to be afraid to approach the painting. I want to still pull you in, but I want to still say what I want to say. So that's, I think that's the dance that I'm still trying to work out and make sure. So there is still distortion, but not as much as there was.
One thing I would say about that is it's a fine line between laughing at the irony, laughing at the joke, but you're not laughing at the character. You're not laughing at the person. It's not like a mean kind of like at their expense. There's something just quirky.
Exactly. None of my characters, I'm hoping, are anyone that you would want to poke fun at or make fun of. Even if somebody has, that wonky eye, that I want the rest of them. I want you to see their sweetness, and I want you to see that awkwardness, because when you see someone being awkward, your heart just kind of softens, right? Kind
the
of
humanity
melts a little
or
bit
whatever.
You exactly. That's what I want you to see, their humanity. That's how everything just rolls into just that kind of statement. And I want to point out people's imperfections, because I'm sorry, just nobody's perfect. And
right.
So I don't want any of my people to read that they are. I want everything on the board. There's got to be something that's not right. There's got to be something that has a flaw.
How many of us walk around feeling so insecure, trying to hide the thing that we, don't want other people to like acknowledge or whatever. And this is like an opportunity to just connect, or to say it's okay, or to poke fun at yourself, or laugh at, something, because that's the human quality.
I when it comes to painting, I have 3 rules. Don't take yourself too seriously. Don't take your subject matter too seriously, but paint with a seriousness. So
I'm taking that all in. So right. That last part, it's like you're serious about how it turns out and about the message and all that stuff that you don't get flippant with.
And that I handled it with care, and that I handled these people with love, and that I handled the subject matter with respect. And so, I want you to giggle, but I certainly don't want you to make fun of anyone, or,
wow,
or who you're seeing.
That's beautiful. One of the things about the podcast that I love is the whole idea of an origin story. I love to hear how people who are us now as adults living in this art fair world, making artwork, and we have a passion for it, how we got here. Like, was little Beth an artist? Yes?
No. Little Beth was not an artist. No, I kind of I took art classes in high school, and I went to a Catholic high school, and my art teacher was Brother Fabian.
Oh,
and
boy.
Brother Fabian submitted a drawing I did to a calendar contest, and it got 3rd place. And
wow.
And I think I was a junior in high school. So, I mean, not even.
And that was the first time you picked up a pencil to draw something?
Right. I was drawing, and that was it. And so that happened, and I went, oh, okay, maybe
I'm good at this.
Yeah. But if you saw the picture, oh my gosh, if you saw the picture, oh, it's not good. It's not
No,
good.
but it got
No.
third place, so other people
Yeah.
must have been not as good.
It was a small town. It
Sure.
was no. Yeah, it was nothing to look at. I didn't think so. That's what got me just thinking, well, maybe I can be an artist. And I look at other artists who they knew from when they were 4. They picked up, they were drawing feverishly. All their spare time was spent creating. Nope, that wasn't me.
Right. Right,
That wasn't me.
like Chris Dahlquist, when
Right.
Chauncey saw her story was she's a little girl and she has written in the first printing lines, "I want to tack pictures." It was like, spelled like she knew from little on that's what she wanted to do. But it doesn't matter when that fire was ignited.
Right.
You know, it was your junior year, and that then what got you to want to go to college for art and graphic design and all that stuff and fine art?
It did that simple acknowledgement, and just it kind of opened my eyes and made me think, well, maybe I can, draw. So I spent more time drawing, and then the art teacher recommended that I continue and go off to college and go to I think he suggested Kendall. That's where I went, Kendall College in Grand Rapids,
Okay.
Michigan.
Mhm.
And it was simple as that.
Cool.
My dad was a commercial photographer.
Mm.
So he would take me to functions, auctions, take me on the set when he was taking some pictures. I was at his studio a lot. So I think Mark would tell a similar story. His mom was an art show artist, so he hovered around it,
Right.
as much as he wasn't, he would say he didn't create any work when he was smaller, that he took it on when he in his early 20s, or I think he was 20. I was the same thing. I was around it. I was around what my dad did, but didn't realize that there was something brewing inside.
Yeah. What was that like for you as a youngster being on your dad's set? I mean, did anything resonate, or what were you thinking? Was it just, I'm at dad's work, this is what dad does for a job?
Yeah, I was fascinated by it. I loved being there. I loved watching the process. I didn't pick it up. I for some reason, I guess I knew I wasn't interested in photography. And just because at that time with the cameras, with the understanding shutter speed and aperture, and, I still do not understand any of it.
Well,
And I
that's
think
why they make iPhones.
Exactly. Exactly. I think he wishes I understood it, but unfortunately I don't. I definitely enjoyed it. I loved going to all the events and openings that he would go to, gallery openings and auctions and things. So loved that. So I was aware of it, but didn't realize that something was gonna find its way out of me.
Well, you go to college, and then when you left college, did you think art would be your career, or were you thinking that doing some kind of a corporate illustration type job would be where you would go?
I thought when I went to school, I thought I would come home and I would work for an illustration house. There was a place in Milwaukee that I really was hoping was going to be my place. So that's why I went to school for illustration, and that was my goal. And I think it was because my dad, this illustration house was one of their clients. So they kind of worked together every now and then. So I was aware of what they were turning out. They were doing billboards in town with illustrations on them. I thought they were fantastic. Yeah, I thought I would end up there. What I ended up doing is not painting, not doing nothing in the field of illustration. But then I got a job at Kohl's department store. I was their first artist that they hired in their product development department to put artwork on their products. Mm-hmm. So I was their first artist they hired. And then I was there for 5 years, built up their entire staff of artists, 14 artists, I don't know, 10 or 14 artists.
Oh, so led a group of artists to
Yep, it started with me, and then I built up a staff, and everything at a Kohl store, about 33% of it, listen to me, I know the numbers, is Kohl's private label. It's their own product. And all that product needs artwork on it. And so I was doing artwork on dishes and ladies' sleepwear and men's swim trunk designs and anything that required a baby, baby clothes, the whole gambit. And so, then I became the art director.
And was that whole kind of corporate experience not fulfilling? Is that what ultimately sent you into this world? Yeah, what was that like?
It was great. It
was great.
Yeah, it was great. I lied to them and told them I knew how to use computers.
Okay.
I think that's how I got the job.
Okay.
My brothers are all just fantastic, and they are computer guys. So my one brother, I would go to work and I'd go home at night, and whatever the project was, he would help me and teach me how to use Photoshop and Illustrator. And I got a crash course from my brother at night and just built up my skill. And then slowly other artists started coming on board, and then they would teach me things, but pretty quickly I picked it up. And no, I loved it. I used it to gain knowledge and skill on the computer and build up my just creative skills. You've got to problem solve in that case and stuff. But then I started painting on the side. Then my dad opened a little gallery in Milwaukee, and he said, "Beth, I want some of your work on the wall." And so I painted, I think I did 10 paintings I started with the oil paints. I liked it. I did some work for him, put it on the wall. They all sold. And I went, okay, let's do some more. Put them on the wall. They sold. And again, really rough, really just very blotchy, blobby character things. But it got me painting. I started painting. I was working crazy hours at work, and then I'd go home and I'd work and I'd do my own paintings. And then there was just a point and then I started doing art shows on the weekend. Maybe 3 in the summer local. I would do the Madison Fair on the Square.
Right.
I'd go to Minnesota, do Uptown, do Stone Arch, and then we'd drive home so I could work on Monday. There just was a tipping point where I knew people wanted to see more,
Yeah.
They were selling, and I thought, okay, this job that I'm doing will still be out there. If I leave, if I fail, they would have hired me. I mean, I left, I didn't burn a single bridge, I made sure all the work was done. I stayed a little extra. I did some commission work just to get them past some humps. So, they said, if it doesn't work, you can come back.
Well, that's good, because then you felt like if this new life that you were stepping into wasn't going to work out, you knew you had stability. You had a backup plan.
I had that I had that backup plan.
And you never needed to, right? You never needed to go back to it, or did you for spits and starts, or whatever they call it, fits and starts?
Yep, I did a couple just commission things just to help them out, but never went back. I never even went back into the building. Kind of once it was done, it was done. I still see the artists, and it's a great crew, but yeah, I kind of thought I would have to go back.
Right. Well, I remember when I was working in fine dining, and I was like a waiter, and then I moved up to lead waiter, and then I moved up to the manager. And the whole time I was working that job, the idea was that we were learning glass blowing and how we wanted to be art show artists, and we were going to step into that world. And so when I was at that point, when we were ready to start doing shows, I'm talking to my general manager about needing, I'm going to take this weekend off. I'm going to go to Madison and do this show, and then I'll come back on Monday and work my manager shift. And he said, well, you know what? That's like a lot of work. Have you ever gone on a vacation and you drive home and you go back to work just exhausted and you were supposed to like recharge your batteries? He goes, but you're going to actually be working. So the whole time he's thinking of talking me out of going to do this art show. But what he really did was he talked me into putting in my 2 weeks notice. And so the next day I come back and I submit my resignation, and his face dropped. He was like, I thought I talked you out of this thing.
What he didn't know was that you just were working on something so much bigger, and he just thought, right, that easily you'll drop that and do this.
Right. And that was the thing. You were saying you were working your way up the ladder at Kohl's, where the money was becoming like a security, and you didn't want it to get so entrenched that now you're like budgeting to have that you need more money every month.
Right.
You didn't want to get too attached.
You don't want to rely on that because, you're spending that money and you're becoming dependent on it. And I knew that I just couldn't let that happen.
Was your entry into the art fairs Mark? Did Mark lead you down that path?
Mark's mom did.
Okay.
Mark's mom led us both, yes. Mark he was doing auto body, as I think he talked about in his episode.
Mm-hmm.
He was doing auto body and then had started to create some pieces. He made a birthday gift for me, and then his mom went, you should do more, and you should do shows.
What was the gift? What did he weld? Did he weld something together for you?
It's a candle holder.
Nice.
It's probably a 4-foot tall candle holder that has multi places to put candles, and it has kind of a flower shape on the top of it, and I still have it.
Wow, so romantic.
I know. He every time we pull it out, it's, what are you doing with that? And I'll be like, I'm taking it out. It's time to pull out the candle holder.
You're not taking it anywhere, are you? Like to the trash, are you?
Sometimes I get nervous that he'll spy it and take it from me, but I don't think he will.
Well, how did you guys meet? I mean, I loved hearing the Whipples story about how they met. Do you guys have a story?
Oh, we have a story.
All right.
We met over a 13-foot fiberglass shoe.
Really?
Yes. There is a company called Ellen Edmond Shoes. They do high-end dress shoes for men. Mm-hmm. They are located here in Wisconsin. They were a client of my dad's. He would photograph shoes for their ads. And one day they had somebody build a fiberglass shaped shoe to sit over a golf cart for parades. Okay. So that, you know what I mean? So it looked like a shoe. So the owner of the company could go into the parade and wave at people and to promote their company. And so the shoe was built by a student in Milwaukee, an MSc student, MSc. Yeah. The owner of the company was working with my dad and said, well, we need somebody to paint the shoe like a car. And Mark's sister was my dad's assistant. And so Michelle said, my brother has an auto body shop. He could paint it like you would paint a car. And but they needed someone to detail it to look like a wingtip shoe. Okay. And my dad said, well, my daughter just moved home from art school. She can detail it. Mm. And so my dad took me to the winter farm and I met Mark and I went, oh, when I saw him. And that was it. We instantly.
It was it, right?
That was it. We fell in love over a 13-foot fiberglass shoe. So we finished it. They took the shoe away. I had never seen it after that. People would tell me I was at, a parade in Cedarburg. I saw the shoe go by. I was at a parade here, and
this infamous shoe, right?
Exactly. And I had never seen it. But then, 22 years later, we got married and we got the
22?
Yes.
That's the longest.
Yes.
Longest engagement ever, right?
Exactly. I called them to see if the shoe was still available, if it was still our paint job, and it was.
Oh my God.
And so we, without telling anybody, we got married on the the hilltop at his parents' house where we did the shoe. So they have the shoe. It comes in a semi truck that is labeled the shoebox. Wow. And it has the car in it. And so we had the neighbors they have a huge barn to hide it in. So they knew the truck was coming. They hid it for us until the next day, until the day of the wedding. And everybody was on the hilltop, and me and my dad and sister scurried across the street. And Mark's friend drove it, and we got into the car. And I'm sure as we're coming around the bend where the chapel was, I'm sure people are like, wait, what are they in? What is happening here? There's a shoe coming this way. We were in the shoe car.
Wow. As you were like, that was your entry into your wedding?
That was the entrance into the wedding, was the shoe car.
And did your guests know the history of this?
I would say the majority of people who were there knew. I think we probably 100 people there and a lot of family. So the majority knew. And when you realize it was really quiet, and then all of a sudden just everyone got to their feet and just applauded and, whooped it. And
that is amazing.
Yeah.
What a great celebration, a way to be a tribute to your special day and your relationship and art and full circle moments and all that good stuff, right?
Full circle indeed. It was, it was something. It was fun.
Well, speaking of full circle, I think we've come full circle and we've had a full, wonderful talk. Beth, this was like so easy. I mean, this talk just flowed and I really enjoyed it. So I'm really glad you were able to take some time away from your 12-hour days in the studio and tell us about yourself and your process. It's really cool.
I really appreciate what you and Will are doing. And thank you so much for asking me to be part of it.
And on a little funny kind of lighter note, every time I see Kina at shows, she says, "You're like the male version of Barbara Walters, and you always make your guests cry." And
and you did. I got weepy.
I'm sorry.
Beth, what kind of tree would you like to be? Oh, Barbara, don't ask that question. Well, thank you for that.
You very cathartic, right?
It does. It feels good.
Thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you in St. Louis. We'll be there together. So
we will see you there.
All right.
Bye.
Great talk with Beth. Douglas, once again, another one that we have been kind of chasing for a while. So thank you for your time, Beth. It can't be easy to give that up, and really appreciate your insight into how you create and all of that good stuff. So thank you so much.
Really great time with her. And I just wanted to also, we've talked about this earlier, I'm heading back to the mountains for a show that has, the mantle's been picked up by our good friend David Bierstrom and a whole team of other greats.
The team is right. I mean, David and working closely with the previous directors and Carla Fox and
on their board, who's also all working together. We've got Lisa Kattenbracker and Daryl Cox and Chris Dahlquist. I mean, so
heavy hitters. So
yeah,
I really am rooting for this show. I wish I could have made it work out with our year and our travel schedule, but we all are rooting for this show to have a triumphant return and really believe in those folks.
So the show that we're talking about is Art in the High Desert, and it is in Redmond, Oregon, and I'm wishing everybody there good luck, myself included. I hope it's a good show.
Yeah, it's that's one of those shows where some big fish are swimming around and they can make your show with one giant sail. So really rooting for everybody there. Can't wait to hear how that one goes, and congratulations for all of the hard work that David and the rest of his team have put in. The board of directors is top notch, like we said. So we'll keep,
come on, just spit it out.
Stop kissing their asses. Get to work, everybody. Have a good week, folks. We'll see you next time.
All right, take care. We'll see you in a couple weeks, Will.
Perfect. This podcast is brought to you by the National Association of Independent Artists. The website is naiaartists.org.
Also sponsored by Zapplication. That's zapplication.org. And while you're at it, find us on social media and engage in these conversations.
Be sure to subscribe to this podcast to be notified when we release new episodes.
Oh, and if you like the show, we'd love it if you would give us your 5-star rating and offer up your most creative review on your podcast streaming service. See you next time.